What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at the Alto Music in Brooklyn headquarters, and we got Kyler and Shanon of the Muckrakers. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. It's so awesome to have you here. I feel like this is a great time to do this interview because I was told that you guys have just exited the studio, so you are officially done with this new Muckrakers work that we're going to be getting. Is this intentionally like a direct follow-up to the albums Off, or is this like a new start for the Muckrakers in a way?
I
think a new start, man. I don't know.
I think
so.
That it's definitely close to a new start. I feel like if you look at the albums Off musically, there's a completely different energy present where it's a lot more chaotic and within the realms of punk and metal. And then this EP, really, it's almost like a different thing every song. Like, a lot of people say that, but like it's very different.
Yeah, we kind of went off the deep end with this one. We're just like, let's just do one type of genre practically every song. It wasn't like we wrote it down on paper, but that's just what it ended up turning out to be. So
we would write a song at the same time, like an individual song. I write a song, he writes a song in the same time period, and then again it happened, and that's basically the EP. So it's like it's 4 songs and an intro, and the intro is only an intro because I was writing it and I didn't know how I felt about progressing it. It just seemed like it was getting confusing, but the first minute was just like I could headbang to this. We didn't have that kind of thing going on, I felt. So I just made an intro.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. So you mentioned every song plays by its own rules and really is its own genre in a way. Was that a preconceived idea on how you wanted this album to be like, or did it kind of just happen that way? Did musical ADHD just took over?
I think it was a little bit of the musical ADHD, but I think also with the idea of the band, I feel like we've always been a band that we're everything all in one, trying to be all of it at the same time, and it just turned out to be this just turned into it. This whole EP, honestly, really came full-fledged, full picture.
Yeah. After the last EP, didn't really know what to do to rewrite our style a little bit, and I actually, to kind of tell a very brief version of a funny story, one of the songs on the EP, Dan's song, I wrote the riff that the first verse, whatever, that's kind of dancey and whatever. And I originally brought the John, and we played it, but a punk song rhythmically, and I was like, shit, just sounds like AFI, old AFI. So I was like, I don't want to be doing that, because people randomly will say that naively. But then I was like, play it a disco beat. And then I was like, oh my god, we're on to something completely different, because, we were known to doing punk music, but this was just taking a step back, but still having this kind of dark grooviness to it all. So that song's kind of a Frankenstein, because it also took form over several different revisions, where on the opposite spectrum of things, something Shanon wrote, Quarter Life Crisis, kind of came to this band practice with it. It was pretty much done very quickly, and actually we debuted it live only in May. It's not even a year since we started playing it.
Yeah.
So that's just how quick everything kind of fell into place.
Yeah. Well, kind of going to what you said, I find it really unique where you said that every sort of track had its own sort of vibe and sound, because I always thought that you guys were a fairly experimental band. I saw punk rock, I saw metal, I saw hardcore, I saw regular rock. I mean, to have a very punky song, but then have that instrumental thrash fusion song that I still enjoy hearing live every time. That's probably one of the catchiest bass lines I've definitely ever heard. But Yep. So it's fair to say that you guys have never really wanted to pigeonhole yourselves to begin with. It's not like you started Muckrakers being we want to be a punk band or a metal band or something like that.
Even as far back as our first iteration with our first drummer Billy, we had one song that was basically a Ramones song with too many parts, just downstrumming everything. But then
you're telling me you had 3 chords instead of 2 or something like that?
We had one power chord that got put in a lot of different progressions. But we went from that to our last day hanging out and doing one jam, and it was just again a disco beat thing. It was a jam called Nightmare. What is it
Nightmare
called?
NyQuil?
No, NyQuil Nightmare. And basically I was just boom, boom, whatever, and then she was whatever, and then Shannon was do 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 do, and I was just what the hell? This is interesting, and not to say punk music isn't interesting, but the fact that we were able to just break through the mold unintentionally right off the gate, and kind of ship it to our friends and be how do you think about this? And they're well, this is cool. Granted, it took a long time to get to where we are now musically. and like also just accepting singing, because I feel like when we started doing vocals,
Oh yeah.
we were all kind of like trying to be something that we weren't, or we just also didn't know what the hell we were doing.
Yep.
Like I was always saying like he was trying to be like Lemmy or something,
Lemmy.
and then I was always just screaming at the top of my lungs. But now it's like I have like my death metal vocals where I'm actually really quiet without the mic, and then he's got like a belting out like really good singing voice, and I've grown to get better at singing. But
yeah, I think we started the band, and I think we all were just like, who's gonna sing? I don't think any of us want to sing because I don't think any of us can. And then like we all just turned into it. We all stepped up to the role eventually and grew into our own voices, and I think that's pretty much the coolest part about where we've come in the last like 8 years of being like a band.
One question I have specifically actually for you, Kyler, is going into like the whole vocal thing. Is like, is there ever a time where you have like a vocal style or even lyrics in mind, and that could help determine the music itself, or are lyrics like the last thing? Like you need music in order to come up with lyrics.
I tried not to be like this, but it always ends up being that I need like the whole song instrumentally done, and then I write lyrics. But then there's times where when I had that dance song part, like that just one verse thing, I put it on a loop for like a minute when we first made it without any of parts, and then I kind of just jammed on it like vocally in the car, and I was able to do that. But the song wasn't finished, but there was still a part there. So I don't know if I ever really wrote lyrics and then a song. So I wonder if that answers your question.
Definitely did. And now, for you, because being a bassist, you know, like, people always like to make jokes about bass players. But, but what, you know, bass has just as much of an emphasis on melody as it does on rhythm. You know, you have to follow the rhythm of the song, but you also have to follow the melody of the chord progression. For you, when it comes to laying down bass parts, like, how do you know what to exactly follow? Do you have to follow the drums first, or do you follow Kyler's chord progression?
It's kind of, it's weird. I do multiple different things where, like, I follow Kyler's chord progressions, but then I also like not even consciously, I subconsciously follow the drums more than anything, especially listening back to like what we just recorded recently. I'm like, wow, like I might not be doing anything like too crazy on bass, but like this is literally like following the drums like and complementing it very well. And like I think it's just like where I've been, like I was a jazz like bassist in a jazz band for a little bit, at least in high school and college, and like I've been in a lot of different places musically, so like a lot of it just kind of comes naturally at this point. So
playing in jazz and then playing in a death metal band and then forming Muckrakers, like how do you make such a drastic change in a way?
The thing for me at least is that Muck actually came first before anything. I actually joined Reluctamorum about a year or two after I had Muck happen. But like we weren't really seeing each other because he went away to college, so we only saw each other in the summers and did not intentionally come back together. But it did happen.
Happen every time.
There you go.
It's meant to be.
Music soulmates.
Now, as somebody who has seen you live countless times, you know, seeing you live is a very different experience, because I really feel like, and not even just for your music, but for like a punk rock style in general, because like, you know, there's crowd interaction, there's energy, and all this amazing stuff. For you, when it comes to songwriting mode, is there like a similar energy that you put into your live presence, or is it a completely separate game altogether?
I think it's, I don't know. For me, I think it's completely separate, but I don't know how Kyler feels.
Can you reword that question? Like, do you mean like, do I write a song with the intention of kind of like doing something when it comes to live?
Well, like in terms of like, is there just a similar energy, or is it a completely separate game? Is songwriting mode completely different vibe than, you know, playing in front of an audience, or versus like playing in the studio or rehearsal space?
I mean, I guess they're all completely different vibes, because when you're writing music, it's always like, what am I doing that's different from what I'm already done? And I just kind of sit there and workshop things. I always worry about whether I'm in a key that I'm either overusing, rhythm, melody. Can I even play? Well, I can play and sing whatever the heck I'm going to make, but like, will it be worth it to make something complicated or just something toned down? But then when it comes to like playing at a show, by that point, you know, I'll always ease myself into playing it and then try to like dance to it however I can. And when I'm in the studio, I've learned that last time I'm pretty rough at it, and I had to get my stuff together, because it took several hours to do the Parasite riff, just the death metal thing. But
Parasite riff is like the best technical death metal. Like
it's so simple, but it took me several hours to just do that part. And then when I realized we had to double the tracks, I was like, "What the heck?" But this time we were in the studio, there was no Parasite riff, so to speak. I did everything pretty quickly, even though it did take 3 days for me to record guitars alone.
Mm-hmm. Well, when are you trying to like execute the material exactly how people are hearing it on the EP, or do you try to maybe change things up a little bit?
Are we talking about just our recorded content in general?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it's impossible for us to do what we just recorded live because there's a lot of...
Oh my god, what we just did, there's like some songs that have like 5 guitars in one part. Like, not like you won't tell that it's 5 guitars, but like it's just to beef up that sound and make it sound like really big. And that's why there's so many guitars, but it'll be playing the same part. So like a lot of it's going to have to be backing tracks. So we're going to have to like rework what we're doing coming up after this release comes out. So
there's a lot of things that we would have to introduce backing tracks in to fill in the sound, but you know, some people might just find it be fine without it at the same time. But when you get bigger, I've understood that people play to click tracks probably a lot more often, and back tracks, it doesn't really hurt if you can do it properly. So yeah, that's a thing. But like, whereas this is kind of like a thing we have to integrate into our live set. The album's Off was an EP where everything was basically verbatim what we do live, and there is no space to add anything anyway, so it worked out that way.
Kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And I have 2 more questions for you. We'll get the hardest question. I want you both to elaborate because everybody has a hard time answering this one.
Boy, I'm scared.
How do you know when a song is done?
When it's done. That's an interesting one. I guess you know when it's done. I guess when it feels right, but also when you're almost gonna be at the studio and you're like, I should probably finish this song, because that almost happened on this last time that we hit the studio, where I was just like, I'm trying to rework something, and I'm like, you know, maybe it's not working out. I'm like, you know what, let's keep to the regular ending and just do it that way. But it's really until you're satisfied. It's supposed to feel right.
I think on my end, when everything is less confusing and just makes sense, it feels right, I guess, is when I feel like a song is done. And obviously when I have lyrics in every place that I feel like it should have lyrics. And we've been getting more in the hang of doing vocal harmonies, which we don't really do a whole lot in the writing process as much as in the studio, unfortunately, because, you know, we just don't get around to it. But we'll be less busy working on like shows as much as we were, because we were touring a lot the past year or 2. So anyway, I think that maybe answers your question.
More or less. I never get I get answers from like the deepest, like, you know, it's only abandoned and it's never done, to when I get the final mix back and it's on CD. So I get a different answer every time. But the final question I wanted to ask you is what you were saying about touring, because I've always thought that, and you know, the scene here in New York, you guys are definitely one of the harder working bands in terms of, you know, you guys are touring all over the country and playing in every state you can. You know, it's kind of like 2 questions in one, but what is your take? Because coming from Long Island, you know, Moontooth has been killing it lately, but it's the home of Glassjaw, you know, and so many great Long Island metal bands, you know, Patterns of Decay, and then, but, you know, touring, how different of like a scene is it? Do you have like a different perspective on the scene now from touring than as you did before?
Oh my god, it's like an epiphany. It's like a night and day experience. I feel like living in the tri-state area, New York, Long Island's freaking, like, this whole area, this tri-state area, like, we're so oversaturated with music. When we go out, like, to other states, the venues are like crazy far away from each other. They're not all like within a 30-minute radius to like an hour. Like sometimes these venues in other states are like just hour to 2 hours, like just crazy far from each other. So I don't know. That's really my take from the whole thing. But
yeah, it's not like there's going to be like 3 shows happening at once in the same like borough.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to have several shows on the same street that often. I feel like there's a lot of good stuff happening on Long Island that I feel like the people participating in it might not entirely appreciate.
Yeah, take it for granted slightly.
When we go out to other places, I feel like they're less put together and there's less haste and just trying to like make things happen properly.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I feel like everyone in the local scenes can kind of be, I don't know, kind of lost my train of thought. I feel like everyone's kind of growing at the same time on their own level, though. And I don't know, the people who are going to, like, do the bigger things will eventually do some bigger stuff, and people in the local scene, I don't know. It's like, it's one thing that I always keep going back to, which is why I'm trying to dig into my brain. Something I asked someone who used to book shows for us, and I was like, what has the local scene been like? And he's like, he always said it fluctuated, there's always waves. A local scene will only be what you put into it, and sometimes bands will break up, or some bands will move forward and do other things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of hard for a local scene to, like, just stay growing.
Yeah, well, I think the fluctuating term is the best. I mean, what I've loved about Long Island is there's some great venues too, like Amityville Music Hall and Revolution and Mulcahy's. And so there's great scenes out there, and you have great venues here that work so well. I feel like promoters are very dedicated, bands are very dedicated. It seems like everybody is kind of growing together so much rather than just kind of trying to step over heads to move forward. I mean, if I'm right.
I think you're onto something. That sounds pretty much what it's at.
There's definitely, I feel like there's been some times where people might be a little bit competitive, but I don't feel like that's been as much of a recent thing.
Yeah, well, just because it's competition doesn't mean it has to be like with the intent of malice. It's like friendly competition.
Yeah, I mean that's how it should be, at least,
Yeah.
Because once someone starts stepping on someone else and trying to be like a jerk about stuff, then who's going to want to work with you?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I guess this is kind of a little bit of a segue. Like we run shows a lot. We have the festival, stock.
Yep.
We have stock and events, which we'll book. Open mics, sketch and chills. We'll bring touring bands in. We'll do some show trades with them. Get our friends to open and close for them. Fundraiser events like potlucks. We'll bring video games, so on and so forth. And like sometimes you'll work with people that are like super psyched and they have no reason to like really live up to like an expectation. They'll just bring a bunch of people. They'll stay for all the bands, including the touring band. And sometimes you'll get a band that's just kind of like stay for all the bands after us, but like they didn't stay in for the band before them and they left after with all their people. It's weird, but like the ones that are in it for the real,
the long haul.
Yeah, they kind of show over time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's about supporting the scene. That's pretty much where it's at. It's like if you all support each other, we'll all grow together in the right way. But if we're all trying to work and step all over each other, it's just not going to work. Like,
of course.
So it's like a big organic organism, all working in tandem.
We're trying to keep a community together. We're not the community of like Long Island, but we are. We have our own little section of it. We want it to like do well. We want everyone else's to do well. Like, well, if we can't help someone, we'll always send them to another part of the community.
Yeah, and look outward. Don't like look inward. Like if people want to check you out, welcome them with open arms.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean,
always there.
It's one thing that I could say on a positive note with Stock taking form into like a booking company and everything, is that we've been able to like really bond with a lot of people, and I feel like when you don't have these many opportunities or an outlet to book a lot of bands, you might become closed off from like interacting with so many people. So like when we're going on tour, we always randomly have bands coming back and whatever, or like in the local scene, we might go out to shows and we'll have bands come to the shows that we put on for them or whatever, and we get to know people on a more personal level where it's not just like, all right, I'll be your friend because I want you to come to my show or something. You know what I mean? Because like I have nothing invested in all that much in it. Like I'm not playing the shows that I'm running, but I get to meet everyone that comes through and hope that everyone has a good time and everything.
Don't be like that guy in the funeral meme where like it's people praying in front of a coffin and like the priest says, "Anybody else have anything to say?" and the person's like, "My band has a show this week."
Oh my god!
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's there's a time and place to promote your stuff, and sometimes it's time to just let other people take the just do their own thing.
Exactly.
On your platform or whatever.
Yeah.
So before we go, I want to thank you guys so much for coming over today. Is there just anything else with the Muckrakers you would like to promote? When could we be expecting the new work? When could we be expecting to see you on the road again?
So let's see if I can sum that up.
Well, we are going to be on the road literally this Friday in Providence, Rhode Island. So
yeah, we'll be there.
That's the thing.
we're going to be in Rhode Island this weekend, and then we're going to be in Vermont the next day, and then we have our last show of the year at Shakers on the 28th. We're actually running a show on Friday, but we're not going to be there. But our team will be there, and then some other stuff. But we're actually taking off from playing shows going to the next year for like the first 2 months to really work on our release. So we'll probably have our EP out before the summer or around summertime, and should have a music video or two waiting for everyone, and possibly some other secrets that I can't really talk about, but will probably be like, oh man, that's cool. You know what I mean?
We haven't even said the name of this EP.
Yeah, we've tried to avoid the question because
Well, I'm glad I didn't ask about it.
It's gonna be like, what the heck when you hear it, but that's all I'll say, really. We've got a lot. We have a lot coming up, but the last thing I can say, the farthest out show we have booked is actually with DRI, and it's pretty much basically sold out already.
Where's that?
Kingsland. It's like
in September.
Yep.
So it's basically next year. Like it's like maybe 7-8 months away from us.
Was that announced that you're in it?
Yeah, we announced that.
Yep.
It's a very long time from now, though.
All right. Well, I'll check my calendar to see if I can make it.
This guy's always busy.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Everybody, we are here with the Muckrakers. New music coming very soon. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We'll see you next time.